Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Happy Valentine's Day from the Chicagoland area. My name is Aldo Gandia. Welcome to another episode of GTF, Gabriel Talks Football. And just wanted to, again, wish everyone a happy Valentine's Day. All of you people out there who have a special someone in your life, today is the day to totally ignore them. No, I'm just kidding. Send them some flowers. Do something nice. It's for every and anyone. Greg, Gabriel, did you send her flowers today?
No. Candy.
Oh, candy. Okay, that works.
She don't like flowers.
Okay. Well, shit. I hope my wife likes flowers because I'm expecting a dozen roses any minute. All right. Greg, I got to ask you about the Super Bowl. That's how we're going to start this episode. I thought it was a tremendous game, a disappointing finish. Of course, we'll get into that. But overall, your impressions of the game, was it one of the better ones you've ever seen?
Well, I think the last few have been pretty good games. So, but yeah, it was a interesting game because I think 90% of the TV audience had counted Kansas City out at halftime.
Very true.
Being Patrick Mahomes was hurt, and who knows how he was going to come back, if he was going to come back. And he played a perfect second half. Now, granted, they changed things in their offense. He never threw the ball deep. He never had to put a lot of pressure on that right foot or right ankle. And he did run the one time, which was surprising as hell. And it was a heck of a run, too. But really, a good game. Now, I don't know why you say kind of a crappy ending because, I agree with Tony Dungy. Tony Dungy said, hey, it was a penalty, and you got to call a penalty when there's a penalty. And, there was a 4th and 2 or something that the Eagles had earlier in the game, and there was an offside on Kansas City, and it gave the Eagles a first down. Okay, well, what are you going to forget about that penalty? People always concentrate on the last penalty when there's penalties all throughout the game.
That are not called.
In my opinion, it was a good call.
See, my problem with it is that there are calls throughout the game that are not called. And you know more than anyone that there's holding on every single play. And that ball, because it was so vastly overthrown, there's no way that receiver would have got to that ball.
Yeah,
that
but
holding,
now, if the call was pass interference, and it was an uncatchable ball, that's a different story. But the call wasn't pass interference. The call was holding.
Right.
So, and it was holding. He had his arm wrapped around him. He grabbed his shirt. And on top of that, the guy said, yeah, I was holding. So,
yeah, there's no doubt about it that there was an infraction there. I'm just thinking that there are moments in professional sports, the NFL, NBA, MLB, you name it, where calls sometimes are not made during crucial points of the game because the officials know, let's let the players decide this outcome. And that was a somewhat of a ticky-tack foul. I mean, you got to look very closely to see the hold, and it really didn't impact the play. It would not have been a completion. So I'm not saying that the game was rigged, but that ending was a bit ruined for me. There could have been a really beautiful ending, dramatic ending.
Yeah, I mean, the difference is, let's assume the call wasn't made. Then the Chiefs would have kicked a field goal, and Philadelphia would have had more time to go down the field and either kick a field goal or score a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's shoulda, coulda, woulda. We don't know what the hell would have happened because it never happened. But I had no problem with the call. I totally agree with Tony Dungy's statement. So I'm holding to that. If somebody doesn't like it, so be it.
Well, and I understand both sides of the issue here. I just feel like, again, I just wish those kinds of calls. It happened in last year's Super Bowl too. The Rams were attacking, and they
2 years ago, wasn't it? 2 years ago, Super Bowl.
Rams and Bengals was last year, right?
Oh, last year. Well, I know there was one 2 years ago. There was a call that that was very impactful on the outcome of the game. I think more so than this one. But you know what? I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. It's done. The head referee said it was a good call. I wanted Kansas City to win, so I'm happy because my buddy Dave Tope gets another ring. I worked for Philly for a year, and I like Howie a lot. Respect the hell out of him. I mean, he just does a great job putting together that football team, and he just does wonders with the cap. And his cap guy is worked here in Chicago for a long time, not for the Bears. He worked downtown at the Board of Trade. And Jake Rosenberg is his name, and Jake is just a genius when it comes to the cap, put together some of these deals. So, how they do it, God only knows, but they do a hell of a job.
Yeah. Well, I will say this about that call: it didn't ruin the great game. I just wish it was one of those calls the referees would have missed.
I'll tell you what I really like though, because a lot of times you see a player isn't aware and forgets. The running back could have walked in for a touchdown and he falls down at the 2-yard line.
Yep.
So smart on his part.
Yep.
We don't need a touchdown. And if I score a touchdown, we might be giving them a touchdown back and have to go into overtime. And we don't want to go into overtime. So that was very heads up on his part.
And Greg, I've always wondered why the defensive team doesn't rush over to that player and escort him, literally pick him up and carry him into the end zone. You see offensive players
because
pushing.
He gave up his body.
Yeah, but he was
he
going
slid.
to.
Once you slide and give up your body, it's over.
Yeah, but he's going to. So get over there as quickly as possible. Maybe you can push him into the end zone like offensive players do to quarterbacks on quarterback sneaks.
No, I know that. But at the time, if you go back to that play, there was nobody within 3 yards of him. And he did the slide into second base, and that was it. It was all over. As soon as he did that motion, the play was dead.
Yeah, I looked at it a couple of times and noticed a couple of players kind of loafing over there, hoping perhaps that he would score on his own. But I don't know. If I'm a coach, I'm teaching that technique. If you suspect the guy is going to stop before he gets to the goal line, push him in. All right.
The other thing, though, too, and I don't know if credit goes to Andy Reid or one of his assistants, the play calling on the 2 touchdowns, Kansas City's 2 final touchdowns, where they were, and one was on the right side, one was on the left side. They motioned towards the inside, and then they quick change of direction and go back to the outside. And both times, this is really the same play to each side of the field, wide open. And the Philly coverage was nowhere to be found. Very excellent job of knowing how Philly would react to the motion.
Yeah, very good. It was a great coaching again by the Kansas City Chiefs. They do not disappoint in that area. I'd like you to address this question from Jay Sanders. He says, why doesn't Eric Bieniemy get credit? Andy Reid says Eric calls the plays. Bieniemy is probably not going to get
Andy calls the plays. Eric, he's done some during the season, not in the playoffs. But from what I understand, it was Bieniemy that found those plays, in his research leading up to the game. This is what we can do in a certain situation. And this is how Philly's going to react to it. I know he's being interviewed for an OC job, where, he's the OC in Kansas City, but Andy's the real OC.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and Andy gives these guys an opportunity to call plays during the year at times, depending on the game, to help them out. But the problem with Bieniemy is not that he's not a real good coach. He's got some history, and the history isn't good. And so that will, when I said, talking about draft choices, you don't want any, you want to know all the information before you make the pick, because you don't want to find out, you don't want the media finding something the day after.
Right.
Well, okay, there's stuff like that with Bieniemy.
So off the field stuff, you're
yeah. And I think when he was in Colorado. So, and could it be a big deal? I think it is, because that's why he doesn't have a job, a head coaching job.
Interesting. I had not heard that. All right. So the logical next question for all of us Bears fans is, what can we learn? What can the Chicago Bears organization learn about how, more so Philadelphia than Kansas City, how Philadelphia has rebuilt this team to get them back into the Super Bowl so quickly after they were led there by and won with Carson Wentz, or it wasn't Carson Wentz, it was Nick Foles. But
Nick Foles once got hurt.
Right. What can we learn from the Eagles?
A lot of key players were still there. Not, especially on the defense. They've done good drafting. Like, their whole offensive line was drafted by them.
Mm-hmm.
There's no free agents on there. A lot of free agents on the defense now. And they've got a mixture of age and youth. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they had won, that a couple of those older guys would have retired.
Mm-hmm.
But now, having lost, they may want to come back for another year. And that's guys like Kelsey and two of the defensive linemen, Graham and what's the other guy's name? The big defensive tackle who's a hell of a player. Not Hargrave, because they could lose Hargrave.
Right.
But he was a first-round pick like a gazillion years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Cox? Is that his name? No.
Fletcher Cox?
Yeah. So he's done a good job. And Ian Cunningham was part of that rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
And so he knows it. And Poles was part of the build of Kansas City.
Mm.
So the blueprint of what happened with those two teams is really well known by the two big decision makers in the Bears front office.
Mm-hmm. So Chris Watts wants to know, do you think that the Bears will rely more on the offensive scheme of the Philadelphia Eagles?
No. In fact, the Eagles scheme is it's a mixture. It's a lot of Frank Reich, and Frank Reich's scheme was some Andy Reid that came from Doug Peterson, and some K-Gun from back in his days with the Bills,
mm-hmm.
and Jim Kelly, and then some of his own stuff. So indirectly, a little bit like Nagy ran here, where, Getsy is his own scheme, which is the Shanahan scheme. And I think they're going to stay with that. Now, the making plays with your feet, they're already doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like you're going to change the scheme, because
right.
he already makes plays with his feet within this scheme. It's really the design of the play.
Right.
Right. So no, that's not going to change. Fields has gotten hurt more than Hurts has gotten hurt. I'll tell you the one thing about Hurts, though, and Hurts last year was his first year starting, played a little as a rookie. But he wasn't head and shoulders above anybody a year ago. He was going through his struggles. And there was people, and tweeted it out on Sunday during the game. I said, Howie took a lot of shit for making that pick in the second round. A lot of people didn't think he was close to being a second round pick. Mm-hmm. And he saw something in Jalen Hurts that he really liked. Because Jalen Hurts, go back in his history, he gets beat out by Tua at Alabama, and he leaves, and his numbers at Alabama weren't that good. But then he leaves and he goes to Oklahoma, goes in an entirely different scheme, and his numbers shoot up. Mm-hmm. But still, there were some accuracy problems and stuff. And now you see what he is now. But what is it? It's his second year within that scheme. Okay, next year is Justin's second year within this scheme. And I think you're going to see a big jump. Third year in the league, second year within the scheme, I think you're going to see a jump. I think the stuff that goes on, and they keep talking about it, oh, well, the Bears are going to look at drafting a quarterback with the first pick. My ass. There isn't a quarterback in this draft that can touch Justin Fields. Now, yeah, could you have that perception to help the trade value? Yeah, theoretically, but I think it's bullshit because everybody knows they're not going to do it.
Right.
But, what's interesting now is that this is when the fun begins now. The season's over. We know the draft order. Next thing up to bat is free agency. You're going to start knowing in 2 to 3 weeks who's going to be available in free agency, who's going to get tagged, that type of thing. That's going to have a play to do. Does Daron Payne get tagged? And hell, there's about 10 teams that want Daron Payne right now. I mean, you see it all over social media. One of the players on the Cowboys, Parsons, he's already saying, well, we could use Daron Payne real bad over here. Everybody wants the guy if it becomes available.
Right.
Nobody's got as much money as the Bears do.
Right. But also nobody has as many holes to fill as the Bears do. That's something that is rarely talked about. Everyone is, I see social media accounts saying, the Bears are going to sign 4 major free agents. I don't see how they can do that and have
I see 3.
Yeah, I think 2 or 3 is what I think.
I see 3 with 2 being pretty good chunks of change. Mm-hmm. 1 being medium, and then all the rest being filler on the free agency side. And then they hope that they can trade down and get some more premium picks. But now that's where I wanted to go next, because now Indianapolis has a coach and, comes from Philly. So, and before that he was at Indy. So, what kind of offense he's going to run. He had a real athletic guy in Philly and Jalen Hurts. So now it's going to be, okay, who fits the mold in this class the best to play that offense? Mm-hmm. And at the same time, Houston hired their head coach, who's a defensive guy. So then he brings over one of his fellow assistants at San Francisco, Bobby Slowick, who was the quarterback coach at San Francisco, to be the offensive coordinator with the Texans. And that's going to be a scheme very similar to what the Bears play. But they could now zero in the type of quarterback that they want. Now, will some of the veterans play into that? I really don't think with either team it will. Obviously it could, but the Colts have swung and missed on that, doing that. And I think they know they've got to get a young guy. Mm-hmm. I'm not so sure about Houston, but the big names, Aaron Rodgers, maybe. Carr's going to be available in about 6 more hours.
Right.
And then there's Garoppolo, but I think Carr ends up in Carolina or New Orleans. He's already visited New Orleans, but it would behoove him to help drive the deal up to go to Carolina. He's probably got a better chance to win at New Orleans right now, but he's got to listen to Carolina's talk. I'm sure the Jets will want to talk to him too. So, he'll probably take a little tour. And the beauty of a guy like him is that he doesn't have to wait till March 15th.
Mm-hmm.
He can sign tomorrow because he's a street free agent. So there's no rules stopping him from doing whatever he wants. But he will, I'm sure within the next week to 10 days, probably take 3 or 4 trips and then decide where he's going to go. So that's going to take one team out of the quarterback market. But I really don't think, unless it's Carolina, I don't think it affects the Bears trading down.
Okay.
But right now you got 4 teams in the top 10, theoretically, with a quarterback need.
Right.
Houston at 2, Indy at 4. I think the Raiders are at 7 and Carolina at 9.
Yeah. So back to the Colts, do you see that they may want to try to find their own Jalen Hurts to run that offense? And if so, which of the quarterbacks that are available in this draft would be a better fit for that?
Well, if they're looking for a Jalen Hurts type, so an athletic guy with a big arm who's big. Now, Jalen Hurts, he's like Justin Fields. He's put together.
He really is, yes.
Okay, so there's only one guy in the draft that's like that, and that is Levis. Mm-hmm. Levis is built like a freaking linebacker. He's like 230 pounds and, very muscular, got the strong arm and can make plays with his feet. So if you're looking for somewhat close to what Jalen Hurts is, that's who it would be. Mm-hmm. But what would help the Bears is if the perception, it doesn't have to be reality, it just needs to be the perception. The perception is Houston and the Colts want the same guy.
Mm-hmm.
Even if the Colts want Levis and they think that Houston wants Young or Stroud, mm-hmm. they got to kind of play the game of, we might have to get to one to get Stroud, or we might have to get to one to get Young, And so you got to force the other team to make a move. And I still think 2 moves are possible.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I want to get to that. But first, let me ask you this as a follow-up to what you just talked about. Can the Bears do anything to help that perception that 2 teams or maybe even 3 teams want the same quarterback? Is there a campaign, working with agents or getting some word out to reporters?
I can't see that. You got to let the other guys do it themselves.
Okay.
And part of it, look, it's the lying season. And there's going to be a lot of bullshit going on. Okay. So, like, we go back, the Senior Bowl. So-and-so jumped up X amount of rounds. Bullshit. It doesn't happen. It happens on paper with analysts. It doesn't happen with teams. Mm-hmm. And I think we talked about that last week. It means, you know what? If somebody outperformed what expectations were, it means go back and look at more tape. Mm-hmm. Did we miss something? And go from there. And it's the exact same thing with the combine. If you think somebody's going to run a 4.6 and he runs a 4.4, well, you missed on something, so you better go back and find out why you thought he was a 4.6.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about what Don says here? Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, Will Levis, all equal the flavor of the month. The NFL will always revert back to pocket passing quarterbacks.
The game's changing. I don't agree with that statement necessarily.
I'm with you.
In fact, I'll go back to when Jerry and I first came in. So that was 2001. But you couldn't find them. We were looking for, ideally, and not necessarily to be a starter, but at least be a backup that you could bring in and put a package together for, is a guy who could make plays with his feet and scare the hell out of the defense. Mm-hmm. And now it's becoming more the norm because you're getting more and more of these guys coming out of college. And you're going to get more next year. The kid from USC, perfect example. So there's going to be a couple every year, and they put a lot of pressure on a defense because his ability to break, contain, and make plays with his feet is a thing you just can't account for, and it makes it really tough to defend him. Because you gotta, you might have to put a spy on him. Sometimes you got to put 2 spies on him. Then you're weak somewhere else.
Right.
And a good coordinator is going to know how to attack that.
Yeah, I think it's a trend that is just actually beginning to take off.
I totally agree. But, there's not going to be 2 or 3 of these guys every year.
Very true.
But if you can get one, more power to you.
Better get them. Exactly. All right, let's talk about this other topic. And then when we're done with this topic, we'll talk about some other things we have on our minds. But I also want to get to some questions. Well, this whole idea of multiple trade backs so that you can acquire multiple picks in this draft and maybe even acquire a second or even third first rounder for next season is very intriguing. It's rarely, I don't know if it's ever been done in the NFL, where it's been multiple trade backs in the first round from the team with the first overall pick. So I just want to get your take on this. What are the challenges involved with multiple trade backs to acquire all this draft capital? And do you have any advice for a general manager, Ryan Post, somebody that you spent an hour talking with recently?
It's an interesting question. And I can answer it for me. I obviously can't answer it for them. I'm not greedy. But if I can go to 2 and then 4, I'll do it in a heartbeat because I know I got an opportunity to still get a really good defensive player with the pick.
Yeah.
Okay, because 2 quarterbacks are going to go then. So from that standpoint, that's good. But do I want to go farther than that back?
No.
Well, now I'm gambling, okay, and I'm getting greedy, and you got to draw a line in the sand and say, where's the drop off? Now, what we don't know, okay, nobody in the NFL has come out and say Jalen Carter is the be all end all or Anderson is the be all end all, and what they won't. They keep their mouth shut. It's the analysts who say this.
Right.
And so how the Bears have these guys graded or rated and how some of the other teams have them graded, we're never going to know that. So and it goes back to the thing with the quarterback. It's the perception. What the hell is the perception?
Mm-hmm.
And then, now if the Bears don't have, say if those guys aren't their first 2 defensive players, just throw a dart at the wall, some hypotheticals.
Okay.
Well, then you could go back even further, because you're still going to probably get a guy where they got in a position, you know what I mean? They got a guy higher,
right?
That the analysts don't have. And so, and you're going to research this. You're going to find out who likes who and who's hot and who isn't. You talk to agents and you got to remember when you talk to agents, they always lie, and so, no, they do. Their job is to push up their guy.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, if I'm going to call Mike McCartney and say, Mike, where do you think your guy's going? About where he's going? Oh, he's going in the top 8. Well, of course he's going to say that,
and God bless him.
That's right. So you got to be just, real fair. Oh, I got a dog coming in here to see me.
Bring him on camera.
No, I got to just shut the door here.
All right, shut the door. I'm going to run a commercial real quick.
Okay.
All right. While Greg is welcoming his dog back in, I want to talk to you about the Barroom Draft Exclusives that has opened on February 1st. Patreon.com/barroom draft. That's where you can get exclusive material of Greg Gabriel, the former director of scouting for the Chicago Bears, a 30-plus year veteran of the NFL. His scouting reports on players and how they would fit or not fit with the Chicago Bears. Plus, Danny Shimon's own reports. Danny has done professional scouting for agents who want to know more about prospective clients. So it's robust material. I write a weekly newsletter that some people have found interesting and some people just don't read. But that's not why you're paying the $10 a month. You're paying it for this man here, Greg, and for Danny. All right, Greg, where were we?
Talking about perception and lying and all that other stuff that goes on right now.
Thank you.
But, let's get to the first order of business, though. No, let's go where they are on the calendar. Right now, okay, we're a third of or almost halfway through the month of February. Are halfway through. Today's 14th. So what are teams doing now? Most teams right now are in meetings, putting together their preliminary board. So if you heard an analyst say, "Oh, the Bears got so and so in their top 10," or another player, "Oh, he's a second rounder for so and so," it's bullshit. Especially if you said it a couple of weeks ago, because it's just now that you're putting together your boards. And what today's board looks like when they come out of these meetings and what the board's going to look like in 2 months for the draft is going to be entirely different. Now, up until now, all the board was the highest grade you had in the system for each player.
Right.
Okay. So, and you might have 5 or 6 grades, on a player, 4 or 5. So, and if one guy has a real high grade, that's going to shoot one guy, that particular player up a little bit, but it means nothing. It's just a picture on the wall, so to speak, of where you're placing a card. But at these meetings here, most teams, every team I've ever been with, you do it by position. Okay, so, and what I used to do is go with need positions first, because you want to get, the guys are fresh. You want to talk about the important positions, because as these things drag on, and they can drag on for 2 weeks to 17 days, everybody gets tired, cranky, and bitchy. So, right off the bat, if quarterback's your need, you want to talk about quarterbacks right away. Here you got defensive line, wide receiver, offensive line. They're probably the first 3 positions you talk about, if you're the Chicago Bears, because you want to have good dialogue. And I'm going to tell you right now, some of these, you get on a certain player and get a little heated.
I bet.
You're going to have differences of opinion. And now, when I was with the Bears, not so much as when I was with the Giants. The Giants, they got real heated. And I think George Young, God rest his soul, kind of wanted that. He wanted confrontation and argument, because, he flat out said to me, "If you're going to agree with me, I don't need you." So, but with us, you got to respect, you're hiring people because you think they can do a good job. And then you have to respect what they do. They put a lot of work in. So, let's not belittle somebody because he has a difference of opinion. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. If I had a big difference of opinion with one of my scouts on a certain player, I said, hey, Aldo, come on, we got to watch tape on this guy.
Yeah,
after the meeting got over for that day, and a lot of times, you usually start around 7 a.m, go till 7:30 at night. But when the meetings got over, or in a lunch break or whatever, you go in, you start the two of you go in, start looking at some tape. But what I tried to do, and I tried to get the other scout to do, is I knew what he thought. It's in his report. He knew what I thought. It's in my report. I want him to look at it like through my eyes and me to look through it through his eyes and see if we could come up, I missed something here. And I see it now. And then come together with some sort of consensus. Sometimes you're still going to be here and here. And then my decision, because I had the better job, for lack of a better.
That's right. You earned it.
That's right. So, but you got to be as fair as possible. Somebody has to be a decision maker and make the final decision. But a grade that you have on a player is never going to be as high as the best grade, never going to be as low as the worst grade. It's going to be somewhere in the middle.
What do you think about what J2K says here? It's a fallacy that GMs draft best player available. Needs and fit change how high you draft players. Hopefully, we fill as many needs as possible in free agency, so we have less needs in draft.
That's true and false, because it's how your board is stacked. And who's to say who's the best player available? He's not sitting in the room and looking at the board. But your board is kind of stacked. If you got that big offensive, a perfect guy, big offensive tackle from Ohio State, Jones. Okay, there's some people who might have a really good grade on him. Okay, Bears won't. Or they might have a good grade, but he'd be a minus in the plus minus system because he's not a fit.
Right.
He cannot get out in space and play in space for an outside zone scheme. So you don't want him on this team, regardless of how good he is. He may become a Pro Bowl player in a gap scheme, gap blocking scheme type thing. But in an outside zone, he can't play. So he's not even going to be, when you get to the draft, he's not even going to be on your board. So you're going to draft guys with lower grades over him, and you're not skipping best player available because he's not on your board to begin with.
Right.
It's how you set your board. And no two boards in the league are alike. Daniel Jeremiah has his best player available, guys. You're going through the draft and you're watching it on the NFL Network, and he's got, these are my next 5 guys type of thing. Well, that doesn't mean they're my next 5 guys or your next 5 guys. Those are his. That's his opinion. And the opinions vary from team to team. And a lot of the opinions vary because of scheme and what their profile is for that particular player. Or not that particular player, that particular position.
All right, let's tackle some questions, and I'm glad you addressed that, because it's something I also wonder too about the whole.
Well, let me finish because we leave half out.
Okay.
So what's also happening now, starting with the All-Star games, is the coaches are now involved. Every grade you have prior has been from scouts or a GM or director of player personnel. Now, going forward, the coaches enter into the discussion. And the scouts' grades are already made. They're very rarely going to be doing much more work on this group, except, go to the pro days and stuff. Their evaluation part, unless they're a position scout and you want them to do a couple more guys at a position or whatever. But it's really now the coaches come in, and their grades then get entered into the system. Now, what I used to do, because the coaches didn't always understand a system, and you didn't want to grade to, when you say, well, how did this grade get here when the coach had this grade here? Well, it's simple. We changed how they graded. We said, I want you at the end of your report, put, he can start for us. He's a quality backup for us. He can make our team. He can't make our team. That tells me the grade right there.
There you go. Yeah.
So I don't need a A67.
Mm-hmm.
That's for the scouts. The coaches, tell me if he can play or he can't play. Do you want him? Do you want to coach him?
Mm-hmm.
But with the quarterbacks, and this will come into play with the Bears trying to trade down, is that the love affairs begin not during the fall. The love affairs start now.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And really, it's going to be with the coaches' interaction with the players.
Okay.
Starting, well, there was no senior quarterbacks except the Purdue kid at the All-Star games. So starting with interviews at the combine, and it's not only the 15-minute interviews, because the day they come in, if they don't have interviews, they got to go over to the trains, what they call the train station, which is directly across the street from the Players Hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the old trade station, Union Station. And groups usually got tables set up. There might be 4 coaches from 4 teams sitting at one table, and one player, and they're all hammering them. And the coaches generally work with their friends, but they're trying to get specific information, and you can spend more than the 15 minutes allotted. And that, so you've got that opportunity to talk to guys. You've got the 15-minute interview at the combine, and then we get into pro days. And with quarterbacks, my opinion, pro days are useless, totally useless, because they're scripted events, and there's no interaction between the pro coach and the quarterback guru. The quarterback guru runs the pro day for a quarterback. It's totally different with the position groups.
Yeah.
But with a quarterback, the guru, whoever it may be, might be Palmer or whatever, he runs the workout. He sets the script for the workout, and you watch.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. But now if you get him in a private workout, we might have said this, and so I'm sorry if I'm repeating it, is that, you're going to set, I'm going in on, 2 weeks after the combine, I'm going to go in and go see Will Levis or Stroud or somebody, and you're going to get it there early in the morning. First thing you're going to do is get them in the classroom,
mm-hmm.
in one of the meeting rooms. You're going to talk, have an interview. Then you're going to do some board work, and part of it may be, draw up your 3 most favorite plays and then dissect them for us.
Mm-hmm.
Go through everything. What's each receiver doing? What's the protection being called, etc. Who's your first read, your second read, your third read? So really you get an idea of how he understands his own offense.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to get done with that. And, your offensive coordinator or quarterback coach or whatever, he's going to start giving him some of your own playbook.
Okay.
Again, 3 or 4 plays. This is what we do. Tell them the play name, and you want the guy to be taking notes, and then you're going to hit him. You're going to get done with that, and you're going to say, "Okay, Joe, now you come up and tell me everything I just told you.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about these plays. What do you remember?" And then you're finding out how he learns and retains. How is he in meetings?
Right.
Okay. Then you get done with that. Now you go out to the field, and part of the reason you're going out to the field, not just to see him throw. Hell, you've seen him throw at the pro day and stuff. If he can throw or he can't throw. It's, can he take from the classroom to the field what you just taught him?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And that's when the coaches get the love affairs with the quarterbacks. Okay, that's when Ryan Pace got a love affair with Mitchell Trubisky when they had the private workout.
And he drove up in that car.
Go, I got to have this guy. I got to have this guy. You know, so.
Oh, boy.
Until that happens, until you get some coaches to fall in love, then, you know, just got to be patient for a trade to happen, because all that other shit's got to happen first.
Yeah. You know, and as you're sharing that information, it reminds me of, and I'm actually posting this on our Barroom Draft Exclusives Patreon page. There's a moment where you talk about one of the things you would say to your scouts is, go ahead and change your grades on these guys. As the more and more information that you get, go ahead and change your grades leading up to about a week or two before the draft. The key thing is to get it right, and so getting it right at this point after those private workouts involve the information that you're going to get from coaches who will say, yeah, he didn't pick this up well, or he picked this up really well, and so that would adjust grades, right?
Well, the scout's not going to be involved in that part.
They won't talk to the coach.
Well, no, I mean the coach is going to know what the scout thinks, okay. But the unless the scout is at the workout,
gotcha.
He's not privy to what's going on. So okay. he's not going to have an opinion on that. He scouted him during the year. He's talked to the guy, the position coach, maybe the head coach, the coordinator, whatever, the trainer, the strength coach. He's gotten all the background. And he's derived his opinion from all the work he's done. So this is, you're taking it a step further. Basically, it gets down to, do I want him or don't I want him, for the coaches? And one thing you can't do, and I learned this a long time ago, you can't force a player on the coach. If the coach is adamant that he doesn't want a guy, don't take him. Yeah, it's going to fail.
Yeah.
Regardless of how good he is, he's going to fail.
Do scouts keep like a portfolio of all of their scouting reports and use that for job interviews?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I still got a couple left, but it's I didn't like my wife calling me a hoarder. So you finally have to. None of those guys are playing in the league now anyway, so who gives a damn?
That would have been great archival stuff for the book I'm going to write about you someday. All right, let's tackle some questions. I make more money if I do it after you pass. All right, here's Nomad asking, I've been itching to ask Greg how confident he is about the Bears' direction after speaking with Poles. Of course, it's no secret that you were photographed on the sideline of the East-West Shrine Bowl game, having a conversation with Ryan Poles. It's been talked about that you were by his shoulder for quite a bit of time. What can you share with us and your attitude about the man after your conversation?
Well, I won't share anything about the conversation. Did he tell me everything? Hell no. And why should he? But I think he was being honest about what he did tell me. And I think he got a pretty good handle on what I think they're going to do. Of course, it's the lion season, so he could have been lying to me. But, and by the way, just to pat myself on the back, you know who started that phrase?
No, you did. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Years ago.
I love it. That's the title of the book, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to when I was with the Bears. And it was something I did for something like, oh, this is the lying season. Everybody lies.
I love it. I love it. But your overall impressions of the man and how he articulated whatever it was he shared with you, and you just get a sense that, okay, this guy, I've worked with tons of general managers. This guy has it. Did you get that sense at all?
Yeah, no, he's in command.
Great.
He's got a good thought process. He knows what he wants to do, and he knows how he wants to get it done.
Right. And
now you can have a plan.
Yeah.
Okay, and the plan doesn't always work out. You don't forget, there's, especially when free agency starts 4 weeks from tomorrow, you can have a plan to sign this guy, and this guy, but hell, there's 31 other teams out there.
Yep, indeed.
And the guys got to want to come here. It's not only the money.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of times it's the money. But the guy's got to say, hey, I want to go to a place where I got a chance to win, yada, yada, yada. And he's, it's just, it's got to work out in a variety of ways for it to happen. Now they're gonna get some good players. There's no question. They got too much damn money not to get, so I just don't see him overspending. He might overspend a little. I don't think he's going to do something drastic like Jacksonville did last year with a couple players.
Yeah.
And really change the market, so to speak.
Yeah.
We already saw that with Roquan. He had a line that he would go to, and he wasn't going higher than that line. And that line was pretty high.
Right.
But Roquan was adamant that he had to get $20 million. Not $19,800,000, $20 million. Or he wasn't, he wasn't budgeting. That's what he had fixated in his head. And not having an agent hurt that whole situation.
And I think that to me is promising that he stuck with his plan, because that's the key thing. If you have a plan, there's going to be situations where you got to plan because of things outside your control affect the plan, and so you have to make adjustments. But if you are going to take a very disciplined approach towards managing the money and trying to build first through the draft, you have to stick with that plan. And so the Roquan thing, I would love to have seen him play another 5-10 years with the Chicago Bears. But at the same time, if it wasn't part of the plan to pay some guy, an off-ball linebacker, $20 million, then he hopefully made the right decision. All right.
Yeah, I mean, and that'll play out over a period of time. But they both theoretically had a line drawn in the sand.
Yeah,
I mean, there was, but I know where he wanted to go, and where he would have gone, but it wasn't 20 million. And so, that it is what it is. And hey, God love him. He got his 20 million from the Ravens, and we'll see how his whole career plays out. But the Ravens are a team that's on the verge of being a great team, and the Bears are a bad team that's trying to be on the verge of on the verge. Exactly. So they've got to, build. We keep saying it's build a foundation, and they're trying to build a foundation. He got rid of the pieces that he knew wasn't going to be part of this team, part of their future, part of the team's future. So he got rid of them, and he had to bite the bullet on the money. But now he's got money, and he's going to bring in the type of players that he wants. What's this guy say? Poles worries me. He's going to be thrifty. No, don't even think about that he's going to be cheap. He's going to be smart.
Yeah.
And I know the guy's got doing his contracts, and there's nobody better in the freaking league.
Yeah, you've really shouted his praises now for years, so that's a good thing. All right, let me tackle some other questions here. We were on the linebacker talk, so J-Rock wants to know your thoughts on, I know you watch a lot of Buffalo Bills football. What about Tremaine Edwards, who is headed towards free agency, it appears, and Bobby Okereke? Would they be considered big signings?
Is it Okereke or Okereke?
I remember seeing him at the Senior Bowl, and called them Okerikes,
Okay.
but I could be wrong.
I've always called them Okereke, but I could be wrong. I don't know if Tremaine is a perfect fit. Number one. Number two, he's going to try to get a real lot of money. Number three, Sanborn played that Mike position, and Tremaine is a Mike. Okay. Sanborn played that position until he got hurt pretty damn well. Indeed. I mean, he was doing like 10 tackles a game, making plays, causing turnovers, getting interceptions. That's your Mike, and he's going to be a real good Mike. What he has got, and what every linebacker has to have, is great instincts. So why are you going to spend 15, 17 million on Tremaine Edwards? Now, Okereke, different story. And Okereke has played, and I think he can play the will, and he's played for Flus. Okay, but it's one thing I think I know is that I don't know what Okereke's health situation is. I don't know what his injury history is. But that's going to play with every guy they sign. Injury history is good. Age and injury history is going to play a big role in who they sign. In other words, I've said it, but I'll repeat it. Hargrave might be, if he's not the best, he's the second best interior defensive lineman that could fit in the Bears scheme. But he's 30 years old.
Right.
And so just turned 30. So now you're looking at a guy, you give him, say, a 4-year contract or a 5-year contract, because 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. Well, is he going to even live out that contract as a good player? You know, so, and the money you're going to have to pay to get him, which could be in that, you know, magical $20 million range. You know what's funny? Because this goes way back. In fact, it was 1990 season. And I was with the Giants, and we had a bunch of holdouts. And our opening preseason game was in Buffalo. So obviously, as I was at the game, because I lived in Buffalo. And so I was sitting with George in the press box, and he goes, you know, George, anything going on with these holdouts? You know, you making any, because we're already into the first preseason game. And back then, veterans loved to sit out through 2 preseason games, and then they start to trickle in because they knew they'd only got one chance to do it. That was a chance. But anyway, you're making it anyway. He goes, no, Jesus Christ, everybody wants a fucking $1 million. Well, now the minimum's $1 million. You know, it's how everything is changed.
Oh yeah.
Now the numbers. Everybody wants $20 million.
That's like when you go to the store now. Everything costs $100. It just costs $10, not cost $100.
My wife wants a special kind of bread. I went to the store this morning to get it. It was up $1 from the last time I got it.
Unbelievable.
I know.
Unbelievable. Jay Sanders says that Brian Urlacher did a recent interview where he said trading Roquan created a bigger hole. He said we could have paid him. How are we going to replace that position?
And it's a good point. But don't forget, and I love Brian, but Brian's always going to be on the side of the player when it comes to that. So you've got to look at that open-minded. You know, and because he was a player and was trying to get as much money as he could for himself. So from that standpoint, I get what his thinking is. That doesn't mean his thinking's right.
What do you think about what Lance Briggs recently said, saying that Sanborn is a weak side linebacker, would be better suited for that role?
He may be right. I mean, you know, when you look at just the numbers, you know, the Olympics numbers, speed, agility drills, those types of things. Sanborn's numbers are a little bit better than Lance Briggs across the board. And what Lance play? And what Lance have? Great instincts. So from that, he might not be wrong. And that's a thing that the coaches have to decide.
Nomad wants your thoughts on Keanu Benton and what his ceiling is, the defensive lineman from Wisconsin.
During the year when I watched him, I didn't think he was a fit. Thought he was a 3-4 nose tackle, period. At the Senior Bowl, he showed a little more initial quickness and athleticism, but the game tape doesn't show that. So I would say, using the plus vanilla minus, he's a vanilla. He's a nose tackle or a one technique vanilla. He can't play the 3. And then, he would not be a guy. He wouldn't be a first choice as a 1, but he'd be in probably the second or third grouping to play that 1 if they don't get one in free agency type of thing. He's a good player, but he's got to play in the right scheme. And this scheme, it's a 1-gap scheme. And that's what people got to understand is what the profile is for each position. And, there's going to be free agents that they're going to say, you got to have this guy. Everybody's saying T. Higgins. Well, first of all, T. Higgins isn't even available.
Right.
But let's say he was available. Well, T. Higgins is a big, tall receiver that really runs a 4.59. That's what he was when he came out of college. And don't we already got 2 of those guys?
Yes, we do.
Traded a second-round pick, and pretty well, Claypool's a bust. No, we've repeated this 1,000 times, and they knew it when they made the trade. People who've been in that scheme told me the exact same thing when the trade was made. The production you're going to see from Claypool is going to be next year, not this year. That system takes a while. And then, throw in the fact that both Claypool and Fields got dinged up, and that slowed up their ability to work with each other because they missed practice time together. But you're going to see it. What was that? Go back. Somebody had to think about Tommy Harris. What was that?
Tommy Harris needed someone strong next to him, like Tank Johnson.
Well, no, Tank played the 1 sometimes, but Spice Adams was the nose. And Tank played the nose and the 3. And Tank there, if we didn't have Tommy, Tank would have been the 3.
Right.
But you look at the numbers, people don't know how fast Tank was. Tank ran in the 4.7s. Tommy ran 4.68. Those guys are really hard to find that quickness.
Right.
And we also had Alfonso Boone. I forgot the last year Alfonso Boone was here, but we had a couple different guys but we had across the board on the defensive line, they were all really good fits for the scheme.
I guess the point that's being made in the chat by Nomad and Ravi is that the 3 tech don't they need a big body like a Benton next to them to really play the position well?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
No, it's not a defense built on size. It's a defense built on athleticism.
Okay.
Strength, athleticism, explosiveness. Spice Adams was 6 foot, 305 pounds. Okay, now if the kid from Wisconsin goes up and does a 7.25 or a 7.33 cone and like a 4.3 or a 4.4 on the 20 shuttle and runs a 4.9, well, now you're going to look at him because raw athletic ability is there, and you might look at him a little differently. And I say, he piqued my interest at the Senior Bowl because he showed more initial quickness and more athleticism than he showed playing for Wisconsin. I'm not saying he's not a good player. What I am saying is I don't know if he is a true fit in this scheme, because this scheme does not use a true nose tackle. Very seldom do you see that guy line up, head up on the center. He's in the gap between the center and the guard, and he's not asked to two gap. He's playing one gap.
Okay. Have you had a chance to see the kid from Baylor, Siaki Ika, and can he play the 3 tech? He's a big body.
You know, that's an interesting name. In fact, when we do the DTs, he's in there. Let me get so I don't forget, because I got this written down in here somewhere. Okay. Go back to the year we took Tommy Harris.
Okay.
We had to have some guys, fallback guys, if we didn't get Tommy. And one guy we looked at seriously was Vince Wilfork. In fact, I took the day before the Miami Pro Day, I took Vince out to dinner. And a nice guy. I don't think he ever went to class at Miami because he loved going fishing. He'd always charter boats to go out fishing and then go to football practice. But one of the nicest guys you'd ever want to meet. And the next day, he was like 315, 320. And he was heavier than that during the season. And he runs like a 5'1". And it's like, Jesus. I mean, this guy had great body control, great quickness. But you had to ask yourself, because we spent a couple hours talking about this guy after this pro day. You know, it was Jerry Lovey and myself and the defensive line coach. And it's like, okay, what's he going to look like in 3 years? What's he going to look like in 4 years? Well, we know that. 360. Okay, so, and as good as Vince was, he was a 3-4 nose tackle. And that's what he played for New England. And a damn good one.
Yeah. A
more athletic Ted Washington. Of course, we got Ted at the end of his career, not the beginning of his career.
Right.
But a big body who could occupy people. He had some pass rush ability because of his quickness, but still that 315 wasn't staying there. Well, this guy from Baylor, he's already 350. And he's got, you look at him and you, it's like Vince Wilfork all over again. You want to say, yeah, but Jesus, he's got quickness and he can use his hands, things of that nature. But I think when it's all said and done, they're going to do the same thing that we did with Wolf, is say in 3 years he's going to be way too big for this, or 2 years he's going to be way too big for this scheme, and he's not going to be able to do it because he's probably going to be 380. And how he works out at Indy in a couple of weeks, that'll play something into it. I wouldn't put a minus on him because his play is pretty good and his athleticism is good. He's kind of freaky. I want to see what the actual numbers are. And Flus and Ryan and Ian, they're going to make the final decision on that. But right now, I just think that, today, this year, 2023, he's not a 3. He's a 1 in this scheme. And could he play the 1? Yep. But could he play it 2 years from now or 3 years from now? And play it the way you want it to be played.
That is the $1 million question. All right, let's move on to Cornelia Squalls asking, what do you think that there are more generational picks besides Carter and Anderson? And so that's assuming that you think those are two guys that could be considered generational picks.
I don't think they're generational picks, either one of them.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think we've said this before. You go back a few drafts, you go to Chase Young. I don't care what's happened to Chase Young with some injuries. Just what he was coming out of college. Or Myles Garrett. I'll take either one of those guys over. And I love Anderson, but I'll take either one of those guys over Anderson. So how can he be generational? Yeah. And Carter has moments when he totally dominates a game. Then he has other moments you're going, come on. You know, where he just kind of takes off, Loafs takes off the play.
Right.
You know, is he going to fit into the hits principle? And you're going to have to do your research because the talent way up here. Okay, does he have the talent to be a top player? You know, a JJ Watt type of player? The talent is there. You better have the heart and that football character to, and I can't give the answer to that because I've never talked to any of their coaches or talked to the kid, but they'll know damn well before they make a pick,
right?
You know, what they feel is right. I'm going to tell you a guy though that, and he might have, I wrote him up for, it'll probably come out this afternoon on Windy City.
Okay.
Aid, how do you say, Badawari from Northwestern?
That's close enough for me.
Okay, well, he dominated at the Senior Bowl. Did you watch him at the Senior Bowl?
Absolutely. He was fantastic.
I watched every single one-on-one. He didn't lose one. One was, I'd call a stalemate. And which is, you know, basically 50-50. He had two. Jared Patterson from Notre Dame was a halfway decent offensive lineman. Not once, twice, and one showed up on Twitter. He got into his chest and pushed him back into the front row of seats, you know, with his explosiveness. But then another pass rush, he never lost a pass rush drill. Never.
Yeah.
He won every single one. And I'll be honest with you, I went to the Senior Bowl over 30 times. I don't think I've ever saw that.
Yeah.
Now he was somebody. Oh, he's too small. Well, he was 6'0", 284, and he had 34 or 34 and a quarter inch arms. So he's got real long arms.
Real long.
Okay, and on a 6'1" guy, that just made him 6'2.5" or 6'3". Okay, now 3 of the best 3 techniques ever. Size. Tommy Harris, 6'2.5", 285. Tommy weighed 290 at the combine and then played between 285 and 290 here. Okay, then the original 3 technique, Warren Sapp, 6'1", 282. I only know that because I looked them all up. I looked up, and they had 32.5-inch arms. Same as Tommy Harris. And then the guy who followed Warren Sapp was Booger McFarland. And Booger was 6'1/2", 298. And actually had a little bit longer arms. His arms were like 33 1/4. So you're going to tell me that Aid can't play the 3? Because he'll probably, there's no fat on this guy. This guy is built like a rock.
Yeah.
He'll play at 290 in this league. And he's got that explosiveness. Now, I'm not saying take him in the first round. I think you might get him in the beginning of the third because there's going to be teams, because he's only going to be 285, 290, that aren't going to, he's not going to fit their profile.
Right.
So he'll be a minus for them. You're going to have a 3-4 team that they're not even going to think about. You got to have a team that plays in a scheme similar to what the Bears are doing that is going to have an interest in this guy. But I think he's going to be a hell of a pro. Really do.
I'm with you. Great character. Has the drive to be the best. And
3-year starter at Northwestern, and played a lot as a true freshman. He was never redshirted.
Oh, all right. So Eric wants to know, how much would you give up to let another team trade up for Carter? Now, he added to that, assuming the Bears trade back to number 4, how much would you give up to let another team take Carter. So let's just play a hypothetical here. We don't sign a 3 tech in free agency. So you're at 4, Carter's available. What would you do?
I'm taking him.
Taking Carter.
Yeah. If he checked all the boxes between now and in the draft, got through the medical and the interview, and first the fallacy with his statement is you never know who a team's trading up for.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to tell you, and you're not supposed to ask. Mm-hmm. So, and if they did tell you, they're lying. So, and a perfect example, when the Bears made the trade Ryan Pace made the trade to move up to get Trubisky,
mm-hmm.
San Francisco thought they were moving up to take Solomon Thomas.
That's right.
Okay. That's the guy they wanted, but they thought, with what we're getting back, I'll lose him. He turned out being a bust anyway. So San Francisco takes him at 3, and he was a bust. So they didn't know that he was, the Bears were moving up to take Trubisky.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you never know. Now you're going to assume if a team moves up to 1, they're moving up for a quarterback, especially if it's Indy or Houston
mm-hmm.
and Carolina. They're all moving up for a quarterback. So, but after that, after a couple of these quarterbacks are gone, then somebody's moving up for an Anderson or a Carter or somebody. And then it's like, well, if I'm giving up that guy, who's my fallback guy? Where is this team picking? Because you never want to trade below the line where your caliber of talent is going to drop off too much.
Mm-hmm.
Then it just makes the trade worthless, because regardless of the number of picks you get,
mm-hmm.
you still want a quality football player.
Indeed. Mike Inglass, how do you feel if the Bears don't take Jalen Carter? What do you think about the kids, Carl Brooks out of Bowling Green, or Kalijah Canty, or Thule? Don't they seem like perfect fits for the 3 tech?
I haven't done the kid from Bowling Green yet.
Okay.
Kalijah Canty, the kid from Pitt he's talking about, right?
Yes.
Kid from Pitt is really interesting. He looks like a poor man's Aaron Donald, and from the same school.
Mm-hmm.
And because he was an underclassman, he wasn't at an all-star game, so we don't know what the exact measurables are. Okay, and so Aaron Donald was real strong. Had pretty good size. In fact, Donald, I have to go back and look at Donald's measurables, but I think they were similar to Ade's as far as height and weight, maybe a little bit shorter than Ade. Mm-hmm. But you watch Elijah play at Pitt. He's damn good. But is he 275? If he's 275, that's just too small.
Mm-hmm.
I'd take him a little later, and he'd be my in the rotation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Maybe because he plays strong. He's explosive. He's got a great motor. I like the player. There's stuff I just don't know yet, and I'm not going to know for another 2.5 weeks.
Yeah.
Thule, I love. You don't have to. In fact, I might like Thule for the Bears better than Jalen Carter, because that guy never takes off and down.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at his body, he's not a big, long guy like, he plays outside and inside at USC. He still had 13.5 sacks this year.
Mm-hmm.
You can't discount that. The guy I don't like I shouldn't say I don't like. I don't like as high as he's going to go. Is the kid from Clemson?
Oh,
Miles Murphy, is that his name?
Miles Murphy, yes.
Yeah, he's like the kid who went first overall last year. He's going to be a trait guy. He's going to test off the charts.
Mm-hmm.
What's his sack production? Very minimal.
Mm-hmm.
And the kid last year for Jacksonville finished this year with 3.5 sacks. So if you're drafting a guy to sack the passer and he doesn't get sacks, what the hell good is he?
You're referring to Trayvon Walker, of course.
Yeah. Now, he'll probably get a little better, but I don't see him ever being a double-digit pass guy. Now, when you look at the numbers, he should be.
Mm-hmm.
But he's just not an instinctive pass rusher. And Miles, he plays the run very well. And in the Bears scheme, he'd be a left end. He'd probably be a pretty good left end. But do you want to take a guy like that in the top 10?
Yeah.
I don't. Let somebody else make that mistake.
Mm-hmm. Moving forward, let's see what Don Burr is up to. Don Burr wants to know, have you had a chance to look at Jalen Redmond, the DT from Oklahoma?
I don't think so. Wait a minute. Let me look at my list here because we're doing those guys tomorrow, right?
That is correct. Meanwhile, Cornelius thinks that the Bears will surprise a lot of people and not draft either Anderson or Carter, and I am with Cornelius there. I think that they're
that could be the case.
Yeah.
It wouldn't shock me. But
And I would not cry.
If that's the case, go back to the question a little while ago, would you trade down to let somebody take Carter? That if they make that decision that there's something missing, they could very well do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, I got my defensive tackles here. I'm just trying to see if I did that guy from Oklahoma yet, because it doesn't ring a bell.
Jalen Redmond. Let me
No,
see.
I haven't done him yet.
All right. Well, we'll take a look at him a little later, Mr. Don Burr. Send your $10 in. Sophisticated Thoughts asks, with David Montgomery possibly leaving and most GMs not wanting to pay top dollars for running backs, if Chicago's able to acquire an extra second-round pick, how does drafting Jahmyr Gibbs sound? And I got to tell you, I like this question, Greg, because I do think that if the Bears acquire more draft picks for day 2, that targeting a running back in round 2 or 3 would be the way to go, as opposed to paying $10 million for a Saquon Barkley, although he's going to go for more, or Josh Jacobs.
Saquon Barkley is going to be with the Giants.
Yeah,
and I got that from the Giants.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, so, I mean, they're going to do everything they can to get him back. I worked there 17 years. I'm close to a lot of people in the organization, and they flat out told me out at the East-West, we're doing everything we can to bring back the quarterback and bring back Saquon. I might be totally wrong, but I think the Bears are going to re-sign Montgomery at a favorable deal. I do not, under any circumstances, see a running back, even if they don't take him, being drafted before day 3, because there's too many damn good running backs that you get on day 3 that turn out to be great pros. The guy who just tore up the Super Bowl went in the 7th round.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you see it year after year after year. You don't spend a high pick on a running back. Years ago, you did.
Mm-hmm.
Not anymore.
Yeah, indeed. Well, I love this running back class, but there are some hits and misses, and so you got to.
I'll tell you, a guy I'd take in a heartbeat on day 3 is the kid from Illinois,
Chase Brown. Really,
that guy's a good back.
He's a good back.
And I know he had some struggles at the Senior Bowl.
Yep.
Yeah. What do you have? 1,800 yards in the Big Ten this year.
Yeah.
And catches the ball really well. Kid from Syracuse, pretty damn good too.
Love the kid from Syracuse. I'm just worried about Chase Brown's blocking, and we already have a guy like that on the team named Khalil Herbert.
Blocking is want to. If you have the want to, you can become a good blocker. Okay, so I don't know what Khalil's want to is. Monty wants to be a good blocker.
Yeah.
But any guy out there, if you want to be a good blocker, you can be a good blocker. It's mindset. It's strictly mindset. You got to stick your nose in there, take a hit, and give a hit.
But you got to have the body for it too. You got to have the muscle. You got to have the leverage.
I mean, Tariq Cohen was a halfway decent blocker because he had the want to, though.
Yeah.
And he's 185 pounds.
Yeah. I just worry about these smaller guys. Like, for instance, Darnell Mooney is a perfect example. The wide receivers with the Bears are asked to do a lot of blocking, and Mooney did it courageously, but it cost them.
But the guy rolled up on him, too.
Yeah. So, anyway.
If the guy not rolled up on him, he doesn't get hurt.
Yeah. This is a good question to end up this episode of GTF. It's from J2K. My man says, who was one of your favorite draft picks, Greg, that you scouted? Someone you got right who was a sleeper or you found late in the draft? Can you recall a player like that? I mean, I'll just throw out one name immediately. I think a lot of people, when you guys drafted Devin Hester, we were like, really? In the second round? Really?
Yeah, but that whole draft was built around drafting Devin.
Really?
We went in wanting to take Devin.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We traded down. We had a pick late in the first round. We traded out of that pick to pick up extra picks. So we had 2 seconds because we knew we could get Devin in the second. We gambled a little bit. We took the other defensive back with our first second, then Devin with the second, and it almost failed because Houston had called Devin and said, we're going to take it with our pick, and then they didn't take him. They took the running back from USC who ended up being a bust. And the only reason I know that is because when I called Devin to draft him, I said, we're going to take it with our pick. It's coming up. He goes, for real? And I go, yeah, for real. Why would I lie to you? He goes, well, Tennessee lied to me. And he told me the story. And so then Tennessee, and I said Houston by mistake because it was the old Houston Oilers. They were having an argument within their draft room between, I can't remember the running back's name from USC, but he sucked. And Devin. And I think the coaching staff won, and they took the running back, and the running back was a bust. And otherwise, we would have screwed up and not gotten them.
So let's stay on the topic of Hester, because it was very disappointing for his fans, of course, that he was not selected to the Hall of Fame, at least yet. Your thoughts? Is he going to make it next year?
I don't know. There is a group of, and I talked to a voter, and he said it wasn't even close.
Wow.
And, it was close in that he got into the final 15, but it wasn't close to get in.
Right.
And there is a block that are adamant against special teams players. And there's like one guy in particular that he wants another special team player in before Devin, and that's Steve Tasker, who's probably he was an all-world special teams guy, cover guy and stuff. Great player. But Steve, and I'm a fan of Steve Tasker.
He deserves to be in. Tasker does.
Okay, but Steve Tasker didn't change the game of football.
Correcto.
Devin Hester changed the game.
Correcto.
They changed rules because of Devin. So, but that's what's going on. So, whoever does the selling, and I think it's Pompey who does the S because he's local. I don't know if there's more than one local voter, but they gotta do a better job. You got to start your lobbying now. It's like you can't.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, and these voters who are against special teams players really need to realize and acknowledge that special teams are an instrumental part of the game of football. And even with the rule changes, it's still an instrumental part. And you can't tell players to have pride in playing special teams if the Hall of Fame committee has a bunch of members who don't consider them worthy of being considered for the Hall of Fame. To me, that makes me angry.
There's no question. And Devin's going to get in. It's when.
Yeah.
But how about this? Because if 2 years in a row, Olin was a finalist. Now he's like buried.
That's sad.
Because what happened, you get that new group that comes in every year, 5 years out, and there's this big thing. Oh, he's going to be a first ballot. Why does somebody got to be a first ballot?
Well, it seems to me that they get forgotten if they're not.
That's right. That's exactly what happens. And so now he gets pushed down. Shit, Olin might be dead before he gets in. I mean,
that's so sad.
Like guys like Joe Klecko and stuff, they ended up getting put in late for a senior guy or something that gets added. And he's one of the best centers that ever played the game.
Yep, indeed. Caesar wants to know, could Hester have been a better defensive back than wide receivers if the Bears would have left him at DB?
No.
How come?
Just didn't have the mentality.
Okay.
And what happened was we started him at DB.
Right.
Okay. And Lovey had gone down there and worked him out. In fact, the story is the owners' meetings that year were in Palm Beach. Okay, what the hell's that big, fancy, expensive hotel in Palm Beach? That's where the meetings were.
Fontainebleau?
No, but so then Lovey leaves the meetings, like just for a day, goes down to Miami, and works out Devin, and they had another defensive back who Seattle took late in the first round. And we were considering that guy too, had we not been able to trade down. So we went right about, where he should have gone, at least based on our evaluation. And Lovey thought he could play DV, but then when we got him, because he was like the fifth corner as a rookie, and being the fifth corner, he had to play. You didn't have a practice squad like you have now. And so he was a wide receiver on the scout team. Nobody could cover him.
Of course not.
Nobody could cover him. And then it was about 3/4 of the way through his rookie year when they said, you know what, we gotta make this guy an offensive player. But we're not going to do it now. We'll wait until he can get through the whole off season, because you just didn't want to put him on overload.
Right. Yeah, it was a fascinating process that he went through to get him those snaps at wide receiver. Do you think Jay Cutler got along with Devin Hester?
I have no idea on that one. I could make a phone call and find out.
Yeah, because the reason I asked is that it seemed like Cutler, who was always seemed like he was.
I was only with Cutler a couple of years, so
It just seemed like Cutler was always agitated with Hester. Wide receivers run bad routes, and Hester was notorious for not running the routes that he was supposed to, and so it seemed like Cutler didn't have the confidence in him.
Cutler, not one of my favorite ex-Bears.
Okay.
Very, very talented. Rare talent. I think it's fair to say he's his own worst enemy.
I think that's perfectly put. Okay, really the last question, because Tony has a good last question here. I think you guys may have talked about this before. Should there be an upper room in the Hall of Fame? I saw this for the first time on Twitter last week.
What's it mean, an upper room? I don't.
A Hall of Fame room for the real Hall of Famers, like the really great guys.
I saw that mentioned the other day, and because they say that there's getting too many members. Well, there's a lot of guys who play the game.
Yeah.
So you got 32 teams. You got guys who put up great numbers. No, I don't think you should have a Hall of Fame. Yeah.
I agree.
It is what it is. Same with baseball is too strict, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think they should get rid of some of the voters in baseball because like some of these steroid era guys, they don't vote in. Well, you know what? If you went and checked the numbers, because there's guys from that era that have gotten in,
mm-hmm.
probably 80% were doing something.
Yeah.
Because everybody was. And the same with the National Football League at that time.
Right.
And so I don't want to hear about, he's juiced up and all that. You know what? He still had to swing the frickin' bat and hit the ball out of the park.
Mm-hmm. Yep, indeed. By the way, Nomad reminds me that Tony the Pod Boss is a brand new dad. He posted pictures on social media.
He had a picture on Twitter the other day,
Yeah.
like yesterday or the day before, 2 days ago, I think.
I think it was 2 days ago. Beautiful baby with lots of hair. Gorgeous kid. Congratulations, Tony, the Pod Boss. I think that's a great way to end up this episode of GTF. And I just want to remind people that tonight at 8 p.m. Central, it is Bear Their Truths. We got a lot of football. We're going to continue our discussion on Devin Hester. We're going to look back at the game. My good friend Dan Aguirre thinks that the game was rigged. And so I'm going to talk him out of that.
No such thing.
All right, Greg, send a message to Dan Aguirre because Dan Aguirre believes that the NFL favors superstar athletes like Patrick Mahomes and that there are calls being made by the officials to favor the superstars. What say you?
I think there's superstars that get calls, but I don't know if Patrick Mahomes is going to get a call like Aaron Rodgers gets calls or Tom Brady gets calls. You breathe on Tom Brady and you get a penalty. I've seen Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen get the shit kicked out of them in games. Indeed. And nothing's called. And we've seen it with Justin Fields, who's, you got to pay your dues. But Tom Brady, you get near him, flag.
So do you think that players who are great over a long period of time, pay their dues, as you just said, do get preferential treatment, whether it's subconscious?
I think it's subconscious. It happens in basketball, and hockey. You're going to say LeBron doesn't get calls that other guys don't come close to getting?
Okay. But you don't think that Roger Goodell is telling the head of officials, make sure Patrick Mahomes wins this game because we want to have a new superstar face of the league?
No, I would absolutely say that doesn't happen.
Okay. That's going to be
my I'm 100% positive of that too.
Yep. We're going to have
you'd lose. Well, he wouldn't be the commissioner if he even thought about it. And he'd lose all integrity in the game.
Exactly. That's the whole point. I mean, this league is now embraced gambling. Do you think that they would risk the integrity of the games if they were to be a part of any kind of rigging of football games? It's suicide.
Yes.
It's suicide for the brand.
And we got to stay on because I got to talk to you for a second.
All right. So watch us tonight at 8 o'clock Central, and the rest of the week we've got great programming. Take care, everybody. Thanks a lot for being in the chat and letting other people know about this program. Take care.
See you later.